spend time out in the humidity, but taking time to come learn about what's going on. Just some housekeeping things. Out the door to your left, there's a water fountain, and there's also a refill station, and then the restrooms are right there down that hall, if anybody needs that. In case of a tornado or something like that that comes in, you don't have to be first, but don't be last. Getting into the shelter like when a bear is chasing you. And that's true. You don't have to be first, just don't be last. And I believe that's downstairs and around the corner is where the shelter is. All right. There's packets, hopefully everybody picked up a packet at the front that has slides with note availability, easy for me to say, on the side. That's kind of the format we're going to follow tonight. There were a bunch of other handouts there that are overview, the main information, sharing piece, recaps of where each working group has progressed in the 6-7 months they've been meeting. So if you don't have those, please take some time and peruse those, take whatever you want of those. And a lot of this I can send out electronically if there's a need. Please make sure you sign in. That'd be awesome. If you haven't, there's a couple sheets going around. And then we will have an activity towards the end. Any questions before we get started? Okay. Hopefully some of you have not seen this video. It's something, I can talk a lot about collective impact and the history of where Douglas County has been, but I like this overview of collective impact. And if it's sound working, all right. Oh, that's irritating. Okay, hold on. Yes. See, this is what you get for trying it first, and it works just fine. Anybody have any ideas on how to get these? Help? Help? Have the volume turned all the way up? Yeah, I just set it down a little bit. Right. There you go. Yeah, this is collective impact right here. How many people does it get in the volume to come on? Judy here still? Is she up in the corner? Just let the director go. A written thing. I didn't know that. IT director, tech director. Well, here's what we're going to do. This could be our wrap-up if we get help. How's that? They can do the volumes. I heard something.
Please take some cookies with you when you go.
Late in the evening, on a fall day several years ago, I was walking on the grounds of Koinonia Farms in Georgia, the place where Milton Fuller, Habitat for Humanity founder, and Clarence Jordan, author, are buried, and where former U.S. President Jimmy Carter had often come to visit them. when I came across a flock of starlings who were putting on an incredible show. They were not the starlings you see in this video, but they were similar. I learned later that what the starlings were doing is something called a process of murmuration. Starlings don't spend their whole day together like this. Much of the day they are involved in their individual pursuits of finding food, selecting mates, avoiding predators, and whatever else starlings do. But sometimes in the evening they get together from considerable distances to do what they are doing here. The murmuration activity has more than one purpose. Partly, it is done for protection. And a few times in the video you will notice a predator who can't stand up to the force of a crowd. The beating of wings warms the birds up as they prepare to settle in for the night. And I am told that considerable information is exchanged during this exercise. The murmuration operates according to many of the principles of collaboration. The birds work with a high level of interdependence. Mostly they do that through a process of self-organization. Apparently, despite all of the seeming confusion, they never crash into each other. They act as though they share a collective brain. There is leadership in this self-organization. Those who are particularly strong at a certain moment will provide leadership to those who are weaker. But leadership changes constantly, and the birds regularly change places because, like humans, there are not many starlings who are always strong or many who are always weak. Learning to follow is just as important as learning to lead. Starlings are not very intelligent, but humans are. Is it possible that, like them, we could act more as though we were working from a collective brain? Is it possible that we could find ways to connect with one another to achieve a collective impact? Can we imagine that as we spend more time sharing perspectives, concerns, and information, that we could create something entirely new? As we find new ways to learn together, to set common agendas, create shared measurement systems, and engage in mutually reinforcing activities, could this be a way for us to make quantum leaps in revitalizing our communities? Could this be pointing us to the way to build communities where everyone has a place? Where prosperity and joy and respect prevail? Where many of our grand and profound visions are realized? Murmuration points to the hope that through collaboration and collective impact, the world we leave to our kids and to their kids could be even better than the world we live in today.
Starlings can do it. We got nothing to worry about, right? With that, I think we'll go with our first group presentation. If we can do that, Dan and Margaret.
Good evening. I can follow the lovely
Welcome to today's seminar, Collective Impact 3.
There we go. As you see, I'm like,
Thanks for that
totally
introduction,
expert on this. You're welcome. That's the most I can do.
Just wait till the finale. So just real quick, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Margaret Bosick, and this is Dan Jackson. We are the co-chairs of the Families Working Group. I'm going to spend a few minutes going over where we started and where we are today. For those of you that don't have a handout in the back that want some of the detailed information about some of our efforts, action items, strategies, brainstorming discussions that we've had throughout this process, please take a copy in the back of the room. So where we started is the Families Working Group has been meeting monthly, and our first meeting was, as you can imagine, a brainstorm session. And what I like most about brainstorm sessions is when you can use Post-it notes. There's no such thing as a dumb or a bad idea, and everybody who offers input is right, including myself, I might add. And so that's really what is the beauty of brainstorming, is that everybody brings something to the table from a different perspective. Of the working group members, we have probably, I think, 20 members of a diverse background, and by diverse I mean experiences, individual life challenges, life experiences, professional experiences. And what we found as we continue to meet, talk, and exchange dialogue is that there's not one of us at the table, and even in this room, so I'm in the family working group, that has all the answers, that knows everything intimate about the system. And so we spent many of our meetings talking and learning more to bring everyone up to speed on where we're at, and also how can we continue to focus on the family. We really, really want this working group to be that family voice, to be that youth voice. We intend to work closely with the youth council, bounce ideas, things off them to see if we're on track, and really look to families and youth to help guide us as we try new things. And, you know, we may stumble and we might find what we're trying might not work, and so we just regroup, get back to the table. So with that, after the brainstorming session, we really talked about the ideal. And with the ideal, we determined there were 4 key categories. The first one being trust, and trust. And when we talk about
This is
lovely, done by you. And by trust, we mean trust in one another, trust in the youth, trust in the families, trust in us as professionals, trust in the individuals that come in contact with kids that are involved in the system, and then trust in the system. And those are 2 different things when you talk about trust. Relationship trust is one thing, but trusting the larger system is a whole other thing. So talking in detail about that trust, and really from the lens of what it would be if that were you as a youth involved in the system, or even your child who were in the system. How would you want that to look? What kind of input could you offer? So that was a real, as you can imagine, healthy conversation and nice learning experience, I think, for everybody. The second piece is respect. Always respect one another as you would expect to be respected. Good job. Understanding between what families and youth needs are and what the system expectations are. With that, we kind of evolved to a point where we need to learn more, and we need to help families learn and understand more about the system. Secondly, to help families, again, understand this system and help us develop a process of understanding about the entire system. Third is to improve the coordination between all the system professionals. Boy, we spent several meetings, several hours, if you will, talking about mapping at what system points families and youth come in contact with system professionals, and there are a lot. And so really, what points, pulse points, can we then begin to further understand youth, further understand families, listen to what they're saying, and get their input. And then lastly is to provide access to the appropriate services and supports that children and families could benefit from. What do we have to offer today versus what we may have to offer tomorrow might look a lot different. And then from that, we transform, and you'll find that in your family's work group overview as a list of ideas. How we can get there, what goals do we need to focus on. It's a lot, lots of dialogue, lots of good discussion, but really now it's time to hone in, focus, and get some work done. So we prioritized 3 ideas, and we decided to create an orientation process for system-involved youth families. Oh, you have it up there, thank you.
This is the most I could do,
Oh,
obviously.
awesome. Okay, and then we also spent several months, as I said, discussing a mapping process that outlines what you go through after arrest. And the mapping exercise really accomplished a couple things. It helped, as I mentioned earlier, everyone at the table as part of the family working group understand the entire system, not just their part of the system. And then secondly, help us determine that we need to have a different orientation process for DCYC kids, and working closely with DCYC and their staff.
one of the things that those of you on the steering committee got to see was the mapping that SG did when they came in, and circles and arrows and paragraphs at the back explaining each one. And it's pretty complex. Everybody acknowledges that. What we found, and I think the first meeting we had, was that there were system professionals as part of this family group that were in there that did not fully understand the map. And so if we are looking at this as an opportunity to educate families in the system, it's going to be equally important to educate the professionals What I would add to that mapping, we're pretty open to talking in that group, and no one is criticized for that. So for professionals even who admit that they don't know that that happens in that arena, that is, I think, a good sign.
Thanks. So in terms of next steps, very concretely, we're looking at orientation for youth and families at the point of entry to the CYC. How do we get those families involved, educated, somebody to work with that family, help answer questions, help them understand the process in which they're about to go through, and be able to answer questions. So we're really working on how do we do that, and we're looking at within the first 24 hours, because we know with trust, that trust and relationship building happens early on. So who is that person? We, discussed a navigator type individual or a peer support specialist of those sorts. So we're really kind of processing through what that would look like, and then also to develop an orientation process for those involved families that we all have access to.
We'll have the ability to ask questions at the end when we get through all the presentations and the questions. So that's what your little index cards are for. Next up is schools with Treva and Sarah.
That's not what my slide says. I can't, let me reroute here.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Yes.
Don't start the stopwatch.
So in the schools group, we started out by kind of brainstorming what areas we wanted to focus on. So what we ended up focusing on in the end were 3 separate areas: absenteeism, school-based arrest, and then re-entry into school. Re-entry being perhaps those students who were outside of their home school and coming back into their home school for whatever reason. We spent, over the course of time, we spent really one focused meeting on each one of those areas to brainstorm what we could do to improve those outcomes for students that might be within those different categories.
Just for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah Hayek. I'm one of the co-chairs of the schools working group. So with the 3 categories that we've prioritized, we've actually broken down our group. We were one of the largest, I think. We have 30 to 35 members. So we actually broke down into 3 separate task force. One task force will focus on the absenteeism, one task force will focus on school-based arrest, and one task force will focus on re-entry. And with each one of those groups, they've met once each individually since we've broken down into the 3 task force and have developed priorities that we want to focus on to really get ourselves to have some strong next steps by the end of summer. So for absenteeism, we're really focusing on organizing and engaging and working on collaboration, not only with the schools, but working with the families, the communities, formal and informal service providers, so that families are educated and have the knowledge to figure out what is the cause of absenteeism, what can we do to combat it, and how can we encourage students and parents to want to be in school. In terms of the school-based arrest, really the focus is a lot about education and training. So how are we as a community, and not any one of these strategies goes to one particular entity. It's not about the child being educated or the school being educated or the community providers being educated, but it's really as a whole, how are we going to educate and encourage collaboration and coordination to find alternatives to suspension, expulsion, detention, and the need for law enforcement contact on school property or after school hours, that sort of thing. And then finally, for re-entry, really talking about those youth that for whatever reason, because of their system involvement, have had to leave their home school and attend another district or attend a treatment facility school. How are we going to make sure that there's continuity in their education from the day that they left their home school all the way through their stay in an alternative setting, and then back entering into their home school again, so that that process is as seamless for them as possible, and they don't feel an impact on their education or academics or ability to graduate because they've had some needs in other areas of their life where they're going to focus on. So those are kind of the 3 task forces that we've developed, and then the separate priorities that move along with that. There's a lot of different priorities we found. These are the ones that we kind of decided were the key issues to focus on, so that'll be kind of the priority over the next 2 months.
The one aspect that's common throughout all of them is really that coordination, and how will we coordinate all the stakeholders and the different system partners to really reach our end outcome. that's something that we're working on. It's prevalent really in all the different 3 task force. We believe that once we can have that enhanced coordination and communication, we will begin to see better outcomes across all 3 task force, all 3 areas for students in our community.
We're super excited about it.
There was a dance, right?
It'll be afterwards. I just choreographed a little something.
Okay, excellent. The next working group, prevention, Deb and Jennifer.
And I'm not competitive at all, but we're super excited. Anyway, so I'm one of the 4 co-chairs for the prevention group. And, now Jennifer doesn't want to admit that, I know, that it needed 4 of us. And so our co-chairs are Judy and Jennifer, myself, and Marisha Brown with probation, who has been able to be here tonight. But it's exciting because our prevention is so broad, and we really worked hard to narrow and be more specific. And the makeup of our working group really does reflect, you know, all the different voices that need to be heard, from, you know, the probation and diversion programs to the services that are supporting families and youth to the funders that are out there and users of the system. And so we've had some exciting conversations, but at the same time, we've also waited to kind of hear what's happening in the other working groups because we don't want to be redundant. And so when we talk about prevention, we have made some determinations that we are talking about preventing youth from ever touching the system in the first place and finding those youth that you know, are at the tipping point and can really use some kind of preventative support. But also prevention in our minds, in our group, has defined it to include to make sure that youth are not recidivating if they have touched the system. And we've also defined our supports as not, we don't want to look at supports just for the youth. We really believe that we need to be looking at the whole family and what kind of supports are in place for the entire family unit. And so our 3 focus areas are: 1, we want to address barriers that are going to prevent youth and families from seeking and accessing services. 2, we really want to help system professionals and give them the resources and the knowledge that they need to do their jobs better or easier or more efficiently. And then 3, we want to look at funding for community supports and services. And so I'm going to let Jennifer talk a little bit further about those areas.
And I was told that I was filling in for Judy, not that I was a co-chair. And Judy's actually here, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Our creative too. Super creative, yeah.
But as Deb said, it's so important to hear what's happening in the other work groups because that really is the information that will paint the picture of what's needed for prevention. If we all sit here and think about the young people we know that we could have prevented from entering the system, that's the information that is needed for this work group to get more specific. It's about not only identifying what we believe prevention is, which we've spent a lot of time on, which we are now saying that it's not just the young person, that we really have to understand the family environment and the needs of what is happening in that child's life all the way through. But really getting them at that tertiary prevention where they're knocking at the door, so we're where they're most at risk. We identified that we need to have some kind of understanding of evidence influence evidence-based practices. We also identified the reason why it's so broad because it has to go across the socio-ecological model. You have to do policy work, you have to do the funding work that mentioned, you have to go all the way to the individual, to the family, to the community, and all the way to the societal level. So we've agreed on that. So hopefully if anyone's in this group, they're agreed. But it needs to be family and youth centered. It has to be driven by the family. So again, all the system work that we talked about mapping out with the families within the system and knowing where to go. I think we are saying the same thing needs to happen prior to system involvement and understanding all the things that were tried and not being able to be accessed and what are those barriers there. We talked about the research around protective factors and the promotive and the youth thrive factors that need to be enhanced. So we've come up with a definition and criteria. Also, that things can't be mandated. When it's prevention, you can't associate the stigma to prevention because you really have to have it be them and families wanting the supports, and they do. Again, if you think about the families or the children that you know that have they've tried many times to get support and services. And we're looking right now, so the next steps are really understanding the community, not around just around the system mapping and all the things that are going on in the other work groups, but identifying those navigators that are more neutral, that aren't necessarily tied just to system involvement. As we know, children and families can only sometimes, we're changing every day, but can only access some services once they're involved in a higher ed system. And we're saying what's out there that we can build upon and align that doesn't have to do with involvement in the system already. So that's one thing, and how can those systems and supports that you were talking about be then coordinated for families? Again, we talked about the landscape analysis and the current gaps and assets and that work's undergoing. But then determining the current funding streams and funding gaps. We have a child welfare primer that was released recently for the state, and we looked at it, we know the people that facilitated it, and we think we could ask them to do the same around resources that are available in this community around prevention. So that's one thing we're pursuing. The other thing that Deb mentioned about reentry into the system and trying to prevent that from occurring is that the Nebraska Children's Commission is working with Annie Casey and Jim Casey to look at the program design for what it would look like to extend services and supports. Senator Chris introduced a bill this last year to look at probation and how to at least extend the plan so that it will not go off at age 19. But they're also then mapping out for children that may be out of home care. What does that really look like? What's the program design? What are the costs and all that? So this prevention work group, I talked to Janae, would be able to give input on that design and be a part of that process.
Okay. Thank you. Mark, I'm not going to say last, but definitely not least.
Well, and everyone partnered
Oh,
up.
my bad, my bad. Okay,
Not last.
go.
Just about.
All right. You want that video first?
Yeah.
Here we go. This is it. All right?
Yeah.
How about that one?
The racial composition of the prison population in the United States is very different from the population at large. If people are worried about inequality in America today, I think this deserves more attention in the discussion. Racial inequality in the criminal justice system gets ignored because it doesn't affect most people. In 2010, over 1.6 million people were in state and federal prisons within the United States. So 497 out of every 100,000 Americans were in jail. About half of 1%. Less than 1%. That doesn't seem very large, but when you separate that population by race, you recognize that the personal effects of the criminal justice system are very unequally shared throughout our society. Whites make up 64% of the total population, but only 31% of the incarcerated population. Blacks represent 14% of society, but 36% of the prison population. Hispanics are 16% of America, but 24% of the American prison population. Less than 1 in 100 Americans are currently in jail, but for some races, genders, and age groups, that ratio is a lot larger. For example, if you're young, black, and male, it's closer to about 1 in 4. That means you have a higher probability of going to jail than of getting married or going to college. These results are unequal and problematic, as poor black communities lack so many of their members. But what can be done? The causes of this trend are undoubtedly complicated and multi-causal. But there is reason to suggest that part of the blame is our criminal justice system itself. in the ways police officers enforce laws, in the ways that laws are written and prosecuted, and more. In many cases, it is not overt racism by individual actors. Many police officers, prosecutors, and judges are undoubtedly trying to be fair and trying to do the right thing. But economics can explain how unequal enforcement of the criminal law happens anyway. This is because the political and bureaucratic structure of the criminal justice system creates perverse incentives. The formal laws surrounding drug prohibition, for example, are written as if to be colorblind, but people with different levels of wealth face different costs and benefits to participating in the drug trade. Different groups consume different drugs at different rates, and lastly, those groups are politically represented in very different quantities. Thus, they are arrested and incarcerated at very different rates. How could minority groups hope to use the political process to fix inequality when they are systematically over-incarcerated and disenfranchised? Despite noble intentions, politics often does not affect the basic incentives and costs and benefits faced by political or citizen actors. We might need a new approach to social change if we are going to address these problems. We definitely need more study into the causes of inequality, and we should admit that radical changes might be both necessary and preferable to the status quo.
Well, technically, that was my introduction. I'm Mark LaFleur. I'm a co-chair of the Equity Disproportionate Minority Contact Committee, or working group officially now. And that short video, 3 minutes and 21 seconds, really kind of summed up what the DMC issue is, and what we are trying to do is to address how we can change some of the ways that young people are going through the juvenile justice system, and giving them some options and alternatives that could possibly prevent them. And we're doing this at a rate that where young people are actually being affected. And what I'm saying is, with regards to who is in the Douglas County Youth Center, typically 52%, well, at least in 2012, but there's even days when it's been higher, 52% of the youth that's in the youth center are African American. And of course, in Douglas County, between the ages of 10 and 17, only 16% of the county is African American. And same way with Hispanics. Hispanics make up approximately 14%, and yet they're incarcerated at almost a 26% rate. So the question really turns out, well, how is that happening? Well, there's a million ways it's happening. It's just not one thing. You know, it's so easy to point and say, oh, it's law enforcement. No, they're targeting. And it's so easy to say, oh, it's the court system and things aren't working right. But as we start to understand how young people are coming to the youth center, we're starting to get some ways to understand how to address the issue. And a majority of the young people are coming to the youth center as a result of receiving a warrant, as a result of being a runaway. And kids, for some reason, they don't run to a whole lot of things, but they're good at running from things. And as we survey, and we're doing a survey now during the month of June, and some of your organizations may have participated, and that survey, we're asking young people, why are you running away? What's going on? And preliminarily, the information is rather staggering. A lot of the young folks are pointing to surprise what's going on in the home as precipitous to get them going out the door. And over 34% of all the youth who come to the youth center, guess what? Go back home. So we have issues that are occurring. We have different things that are happening in the home that are causing youth to flee. We're getting kids where once they're out, they're being access to behaviors that's not in their best interest. And what we're doing to address it is, I think I got 1 minute left. I'm good.
You're good.
I got 2. Oh, cool. Well, listen up. We've got, in our DMC committee, Equity DMC committee, we meet now the last Wednesday of each month. And we're broken into 5 areas. Surveys, which we're doing now, and those surveys are for kids. And we're also doing a survey for parents and providers. Family engagement, community awareness, data, which really tends to drive a lot of what it is we're trying to figure out, and DMC conference. We're planning on either having a DMC conference or sending folks to figure out how we can best do a DMC conference. And that's on our work plan now. But I'm pleased to say that 3 years ago, what was on our work plan was trying to figure out why youth who didn't get visits within 30 days returned at a 68% rate. So it's a big issue where young people don't get visits. And then the consequence of them not getting visits is, and I tell you what, 68%, we say that for a year, but a whole bunch of them are back within 6 months. So we, through the DMC, we wanted to find out why aren't people visiting. So what do? Now we call parents of the kids who come in, and we send them all a survey. And we ask them, well, what are we doing wrong? And what they're telling us was that we weren't very friendly. And that when they were coming to visit, they almost felt like they were coming to detention. So,
Mark, it was the strip searches.
Yeah, that would do it for me. So we stopped searching, and we started doing some things differently, and we started putting cookies out, and we put a little video monitor up there so people can see what the youth center actually looks like, and visitation has gone up 35%. And we are just tickled pink. And there's plenty of room in the committee, and we just want to address the issue, and we know it's going to take time, but we know more than anything else, it's going to take a